Well, welcome everybody. My name's Neil Howman from Live. Welcome to today's Marketing Kitchen, second in our series of Marketing Kitchens, and there'll be many more. There'll be many more. But before we dive fully into the main course, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Ashley, who's going to give us all a quick orientation of the kitchen and the live platform today. Ashley, over to you.
All right. So to get to this main room, or what we're calling the main course, you're going to use this browser here, and this will be your map to all the different rooms on this environment build. You can think of this as similar to an in-person event, and all of these are different rooms you can walk into to have different conversations. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see who is in each room. You can see all of us right now are currently in the main course. And if you want to switch rooms, you can either click it here on the left-hand side, or you can click one of these buttons and you will get a message that looks like this. If you do want to make the jump into the next room, you'll click Open Zoom Meetings, and it will immediately exit you from your current room and you will jump into the new room. If you don't want to do that, you can click Cancel, and on the left-hand side, click Map View to get back to that main section where you can see all the different rooms. On the bottom of this left-hand side here, we also have what we're calling the Marketing Kitchen Archive. And this link will take you to all of our previous Marketing Kitchens where we record all of our different sessions. All right.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Yes, I would really flag up that Marketing Kitchen archive. Obviously, we only started last week with a great session with Kitty Higginbotham talking about messaging. But obviously, that archive is going to grow and grow week on week. So there'll be a great resource for you there. Anyway, on to this week's Marketing Kitchen. And I'd like to welcome into the kitchen Joseph Lasser. Hi, Joseph.
Hi, Neil. How's it going?
It's going very well. Now, Joseph is a keen chef. I was going to say amateur chef, but you know, it looked pretty professional to me. And
Thank you.
in honor of Joseph's expertise in both kitchens, shall we say, I've got a Japanese themed kitchen here, Joseph, because he did deliver a fantastic sushi making session on this very platform, folks, on live. So, Joseph, what do you think? I've just had it done overnight.
It looks great. Love the design.
Yeah.
Love the bamboo curtains. It looks really wonderful.
Could you see yourself rustling up some fantastic sushi in
I
this kitchen?
could, but I
You
could. I'm
could.
not too keen on eating on the floor, though. I don't like
On the
the
floor?
tall. It's very tall. So
Low down eating,
yeah.
a bit wearing on the knee joints. I hear you. I hear you. Joseph's day job, however, is an account manager for Wall Street Communications, and I think it's fair to say that you're pretty much the go-to guy for many of Wall Street's clients as far as their social media strategy. Am I bigging you up too far? I think you are, Joseph. But,
No, I would say that that's accurate. Also get to work
nice.
on our own social channel quite a bit too. So had a lot of insight into different parts of the social world the past couple of years.
And you know, obviously, you have a much broader skill set than that. But we're just talking about your social media
Yep.
expertise today. Just a word about the format of this session. So Joseph and I will be taking a dive into the main course very shortly, and we'll be talking for about 15 or 20 minutes about this specific subject, and then Joseph very kindly has agreed to stick around if you have any further questions on social media strategy. Joseph would be very happy to answer your questions, talk more at length, maybe revisit some of the things we talk about on this session today. We will also have available two of our marketing master chefs, Chris Lasser. It sounds like a family business, this, Joseph. I'm not sure if this is a family restaurant we're working on here, and Karen Cohen, who will be on hand to answer any marketing questions you have on any marketing related topic. So Please stick around. Please, by all means, put your questions in the chat while Joseph and I are talking. I'll get to them. We might find opportunities to invite you to unmute your mic, and actually I'll ask your question in person. Let's see how it goes. You know, I mean, we've rehearsed a bit, but we haven't over-rehearsed. So on to the main course. And the title of this session is Unlocking Social Media Power, 5 Keys to Trade Show Success. A lot of these marketing kitchens are sort of focused ahead of trade shows or big industry events. Otherwise, the topic just gets so broad. And I asked Joseph to sort of list 5 or 6 key points for you to think about when you're planning your social media strategy ahead of a major industry event, such as a trade show. So, Joseph, let's get to your first point, and this is very interesting to me. You've said invest your time on social platforms wisely. It sounds like you know, words from the mountain there, but really I think it's the follow-up part of that question. Do you need 3, maybe 4 channels, or is LinkedIn enough? Well, Joseph, is LinkedIn enough?
Well, I think to speak to the question as a whole, we've seen a lot of changes on other platforms, whether that's kind of ownership changing or algorithms changing. But personally, from the B2B side and working with a couple companies and then looking at, the Wall Street kind of communications page itself, like a lot of great engagement is kind of coming from LinkedIn, and they've really started to market and push themselves as like the premier B2B platform for social media. And I'm certainly seeing that, I guess, reflected in the engagement numbers and the posts we're doing week by week. So not that you should put all of your eggs kind of in one basket, but I've seen a lot of priority go towards creating great LinkedIn content, building out both company and personal pages there, kind of seeing a strong return on time and investment, and putting an emphasis on that platform. So I think looking at, if you're taking a look at your analytics and you're maybe not seeing them perform on other platforms, kind of looking at why that may be, and if you should maybe think about investing your time onto one platform more heavily to see what you can generate there. I've certainly seen a huge benefit of just working and putting a lot of focus on LinkedIn in the past year. So
yeah. So a couple of questions come out of that, Joseph. I mean, there was a time not too long ago, and we don't need to sort of name these social media platforms, but I'm sure we know which ones we're talking about, where there was a little bit more of a mix that we felt, I suppose, in the B2B space, more confident about using. The platform formerly known as the Little Blue Bird, shall we say, is that's somewhat declined. I sense it has, but what are you getting from your side?
I guess from what I've heard in personal experience, I haven't necessarily seen it as a huge benefit or social driving factor for companies, but do know, I guess, of a lot of people who still use it for their own kind of personal use. So they might be getting some news from there. There certainly are magazines, editors still using X. So I think that if you want to continue to kind of promote and have your voice there, but not have it be like part of your social platform, you could even use it as a way to direct people back to your content on LinkedIn too. But it doesn't hurt to keep publishing your content there either, and to keep that cadence up, especially if you have a lot of followers. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, I think so. But I'm maybe just expanding that slightly into the areas where maybe a younger demographic in our industry or industries are perhaps using TikTok and Instagram more. Is that mainly personal still, or are you finding any sort of business cases
From
efficiently
my
there?
personal experience, I have not used, I guess, Instagram or TikTok too much to drive social media content. But that being said, those are still two very large platforms, heavily, kind of influenced by either the video or the images you're kind of putting out there too. So if you have content and you can identify an audience you want to tap into there, it's still certainly worth exploring. But yeah.
I think it's probably getting, it's the age-old thing of knowing who your customers are and
Yes.
where they're looking. There's no harm in trying sort of campaigns in those areas, I suppose, to see what the return is. But let's move on. I think the next couple are very much related. It all comes down to content, really, and how you want to communicate that content, communicate those messages. But you've posed a question: is your content calendar ready for whichever trade show or whichever event you're aiming towards? I was a bit intrigued by that when I first read it. Obviously, it has an obvious sense. You have content, you put it in a calendar about when you're going to release that. But I'd be grateful if you could unpick that
Yeah.
slightly. Yeah,
So social media planning as a whole, you should kind of have that social calendar built out where you're looking at it, on a week to week basis. But especially ahead of shows, it can be helpful to identify, what you want to be posting about at, for example, NAB coming up.
sure.
And you might say, oh, that's in April, that's kind of 2 months from today. But more often than not, you'll know kind of what your partner marketing activities are. You'll know what social and networking events you're going to be at, activities happening at the booth. So having those kind of planned out on social, somewhere where the ideas are stored, where like, okay, April 16th is day one, like we're gonna get a shot of everyone at the booth this morning, or we're going to let people know we're at the show by taking like a photo in front of the sign, right?
Right.
You can start to outline those posts and ideas well ahead of the show, so that when you're ready, and when you're there, it's all prepared. So I would say that kind of having a content calendar, having those posts planned out, is, I think, one of the most successful ways to approach social trade shows. Because then it's ready. You don't really need to, think about it at the show, because we all know how busy it can get.
Sure, but I noticed that when you're talking content, you're talking the whole range of things. Like, what
Yeah.
events have we got? What sort of markers have we got throughout a show? But rolling back from that, say at this point, and say we are talking about a show like NAB, which is in, oh my goodness, 6 weeks' time or something crazy like that. Um, we're also talking messages as well. So, content, I think that's what got me about the word content. It's a very broad term, and you're meaning, the messaging about particular products and solutions, and then other content which can tie into various events you've got planned or activities on your booth. Um, it's a big task to perhaps organize all those in the right sort of priorities to get your messages clear. I've always felt that there could be a million and one messages that you'd wish to convey, but it's probably better to sort of reduce those down to three or four key ones. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, maybe, starting from kind of a brainstorm of just going line by line, like, all right, looking at the show, like what's on the booth, right? Each thing on the booth could be its own own post. Sales and marketing, of course, are each going to have their own kind of input on that. So I think starting with the larger list and then whittling it down and then planning it out really gives some perspective as to when things should go out, whether should we start promoting that message a month ahead of the show? Is it something maybe we want to save as like a follow-up after the show? So kind of getting all of your ideas down and into one place, into a content calendar really helps add kind of perspective to what your trade show initiatives are, because you don't necessarily want to be posting every day. You want to put a lot of thought into the messages you're creating. So I think starting with that content calendar really helps put all of your messages, all of your activities, all your events into perspective.
I'm interested in your own personal experience of, coming into that initial conversation, let's say with a client,
Yeah.
and you get all these voices, all these perhaps sort of, priorities in different parts of the business. Have you? You've got to be a diplomat, haven't you? But you've got to, I suppose the advice you've got to do is really just get them, as you said, to think about what is the one key thing from each each department wishes to convey. Um, I just wondered if you can share without mentioning any names, any.
Yeah. So I think I've kind of done 2 one-on-one chats already about the show. We have, kind of put together a content calendar for one where we're taught, where we looked at what we want to promote ahead of the show, how we're going to do it. And then of course, what kind of graphics and imagery will go along with it. And that expands to blogs that they've done in the past year, that expands to like videos that they have, and then, to upcoming announcements and how we can tie those kind of back into their overall NAB messaging. On the other side, if client, and we've started to talk about it, but they might only have a couple posts ahead of the show. They don't necessarily need like a more robust content calendar. So that's one where we'll probably sit down 2-3 weeks before the show, go these are our events, this is what we want to post about, and we'll have a couple of key messages. So in one sense, for one client, we're very, very prepared. For another, they don't necessarily need as much social support at the show, but nonetheless, we've kind of started the conversation in both places. So if anything does come up and the content calendar needs to get changed, at least we have kind of a list of posts, a list of ideas we can pull
Got a
from.
framework. Yeah.
Yes, got the framework.
Yeah.
2 months, kind of ahead of the show. So we won't ever kind of have a week where we're looking for, a piece of content to post about.
So that calendar really just becomes your framework, your hub, and you can work from that. We've got a question from Sunny's just come in here. Joseph, in your experience, what types of posts work best before, during, and after a show? So that's really good, because obviously not every communication is the same. Maybe we'll get onto that a little bit more.
Yes. And I think that is a great question. So before the show, things, promoting things like your newsletter, your blogs, are all great, but I will say, anywhere where you can kind of tie in maybe like last year's NAB, is also a great opportunity. The picture on social media, is, what people see when they're scrolling through their feed. More often than not on a post, you have to click see more. So having a great photo, having something that's engaging, that's interesting to someone, just kind of looking through their feed, whether that's on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, any platform. So any content, before the show is good, as long as you're tying it back into, back into your messaging. But I would say that, yes, yeah, especially if you have a great annual party, yeah. Sharing pictures. Yeah, sharing pictures from last year. I will say the biggest takeaway I've gotten from events, big or small, is that people love seeing pictures of people. And that really speaks true on social. So, if you have photos from last year's NAB or an event you did at NAB last year, and it's got a couple of key people in it, that might be at NAB this year, that is a great way to drive engagement. So during and after a show, pictures of people, I would say, have been like the most successful I've seen.
It's quite
Drive
quite
kind of
refreshing to hear, Joseph. Never underestimate the power of people, and
yeah,
people
yeah,
getting together at shows, and it's a great opportunity, to do all of that as well as just talk, technology, for example, so that's great. This next one is a really good one, and I think again perhaps it has some self-evident benefits to it, but I would invite you again to perhaps expand on this and maybe share some examples about any co-promotional activities you have with other companies, partners, customers, etc. Now, obviously, to my mind, that says immediately that expands the reach of your messaging if you can, combine with a partner and customer. But I wondered if you could expand on that a little bit and perhaps share some examples on what you had in mind when you gave us this great point.
Yeah, absolutely. And this again, kind of ties back into that content calendar. Once you know where you're going to be at the show, you know who's going to what events, and you know who you're going to see there and who you want to see. So kind of outlining when you're going to be at those events or doing those co-marketing activities, whether that's before or whether that's after the show. The benefit of having it outlined, assigning a date to it, is that you have time to find your partners, or touch base with your partners marketing department, right? You can give them a heads up that saying, hey, we're going to do a social post today.
Sure.
Ideally, it's going to feature an image of maybe two executives or something at this networking event. Can you plan to kind of circulate the post and share it? And we'll do the same if you post something. So, having that outlined, knowing about that beforehand, really allows you to prepare and kind of craft a plan to create a really successful post. On LinkedIn too, especially, been noticing how important it is to have people tagged in posts, how important it is to have other companies tagged in posts, but also how necessary it is for those companies and those people to actually come engage with your post. You'll really kind of see the LinkedIn algorithm help your posts like snowball if those people and everyone you've tagged kind of come and engage with it, like, comment, reshare, whatever it is they may do with it. But outlining what your activities are going to be, outlining your events, allows you time to prepare for that. So,
Well, I mean, I think
yeah,
the great thing about last week's Marketing Kitchen and indeed this week is, there will be overlaps and recurring themes. And of course, with messaging and your social media strategy, it all ties in, a lot of pre-planning. And it's all about, certainly in the lead in to a major event such as NAB, it's about building that momentum, isn't it? Building that head of steam. And then once the show is taking place, obviously, and then finished, it's about maintaining that through there. So anything I think that can expand your reach, it positions companies, doesn't it? It positions organizations as if they're connected and working with other real key players. The benefits are obvious there.
absolutely.
Now, there was one point, the next point that you picked up on. It took me a while to understand, and I had to ask you when we were having a bit of a run through, what you were really driving at here. So
Yeah.
I'm going to read out the point in its entirety, but then perhaps offer it over to you to unpick it a little bit for us and explain more. So identify your biggest engagers, and we're talking specifically LinkedIn now, your biggest engagers on LinkedIn, and then create an employee engagement program. There seems to be two or three things going on there, Joseph. So maybe you
Yeah.
could let us hear what you were thinking there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say this applies, to platforms like X and things like that. But what I mean by that is, you oftentimes have people in your organization who spend a great deal of time on social platforms, kind of building out their own brand, but also then wanting to promote, company messaging through that to their connections, sales especially. So identifying kind of key people in your sales department, identifying people with a very large network on LinkedIn or X, ahead of these posts, kind of getting their input on what they want to see on social ahead of a show, because it should help you drive traffic to your booth. They should help promote your messaging, keeping them in the loop about when you might be posting, a blog that someone wants to share with, a potential sales lead, or, even if it's like a newsletter or something like that. Having these people identified, keeping them in the loop, just like, you keep your partners in the loop for co-marketing activities, really helps drive engagement back to your page. So, once the post is up, you can kind of shoot them over a link and say, hey, we published this morning. It would be great if you could share it on your personal page. And I've seen, a lot of success through, like kind of two different clients in doing that, where in one case, a client had a much larger following on some of their personal pages than they did on their company pages. And they kind of used their own personal pages to promote, some very key announcements that they were making. And, over the course of the year, they were able to actually drive a lot of their followers back to the company page. So making sure you identify those people and keeping them in the conversation is really important, especially while you're at a show where those people might be kind of featured in photos, like event photos or photos on the booth, photos with customers, things like that.
So I guess that's where your point about making sure they're tagged correctly come in, because they can backlink and just build that network of recognition. Um,
Yes, yeah.
Talking of LinkedIn, I mean, your last points were more of a deep dive into aspects of LinkedIn. So let's just accept that LinkedIn is the primary B2B. It's certainly the one I use most, just because I think it has the most legitimacy for business people to interact and talk.
Yeah.
Doesn't remove people putting sort of more personal content to them, campaigns they're following or what their pastimes are, but it's usually sort of, I think it has a legitimacy as far as doing business is concerned. Now, tell us a bit more, Joseph, about LinkedIn newsletters and how you can leverage those.
Yeah. So LinkedIn has kind of added a very simple and straightforward publishing platform. You can view this on kind of any company page, and I believe you can kind of do this with your personal page too, but where you can go in and you can create monthly, weekly newsletter, and you can kind of format and publish it, and it will send it out to your followers. They do have to kind of subscribe to it, but I've seen this become a huge asset, not only, I guess, to the Wall Street page, but also to kind of another client's page. And this is great, I think, because you have people spending so much time on social platforms. It's really nice now that they can go in and get a company newsletter sent directly to them on LinkedIn. And then what's interesting, I think, about this too is that if you're doing a LinkedIn newsletter, every time you publish an issue versus it just getting sent to your email,
Yeah.
you get any one of your newsletter subscribers there gets like a personalized notification every month when you send your newsletter out. So they don't have to leave the platform. They can view it all there. You can add backlinks, to it. You can link people back to your website. You can put really whatever you want in there.
Mm.
So I've seen this become a great tool for companies. And I mean, you can look at how many views the newsletter gets. You can look at your engagement rate. You can look at your click-through rate, which is, I know, really important too. kind of judging the success of an email newsletter. And from what I've only seen kind of successful metric to support continuing to do it, so much so that we're really putting a large emphasis on formatting those posts for a particular client this year. So
for anyone who's interested in perhaps creating one, is that just a function on LinkedIn that they can
yeah,
go to?
really, it's really simple. When you go to your page, as long as you have kind of admin access, it should just be like on the left-hand corner, and you can kind of go in and play with the tool too without publishing anything.
Publishing, always a
Yeah,
useful thing.
yes, yeah.
Gotta think about putting that. Yeah.
And you can see who is subscribing, right, to your newsletter versus who might be just subscribing to your homepage. So if you're looking for maybe some new sales leads, or just kind of want to get a sense of who might be interested in it, LinkedIn does let you see that sort of information. So
Cool.
again, keeping people in the loop with what's going on with social is really important, because important sales lead might have subscribed to your newsletter on LinkedIn, and you might want to kind of follow up with them. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. How long has it been a function? Is it relatively recent?
We've been using or I've been using the LinkedIn newsletter feature for over a year now.
Oh,
So
pretty well
yeah,
established.
I
That's
will
fantastic.
say in the B2B like M&E space, it's relatively new. I'm subscribed to like a couple companies' newsletters, but it's not a tool I have seen people take a huge advantage of. And I think that a lot more people should be.
Well, if there's anybody watching this, either in our audience today or live, or watching the recording, who wants to find out more, I'm sure that we'll be able to put your contact details there, Joseph, and they can come
Yep,
and talk.
absolutely.
Now, this sounds a fairly straightforward and obvious one, but I believe you must have put this question in for a reason. Are you inviting your followers to engage? Now, I would have thought that is something that we probably do as second nature, but maybe you've got some other insights on that, getting people to fully engaged. Obviously, they followed you once on LinkedIn, for example, but really
Yeah.
engaging in the content. Any tips there or advice?
So I would say, and this is, I guess, like a free a free tip. But on LinkedIn, something really cool that you can do, is you can go and invite your connections to follow your page. It's totally free. They give you a certain number. They give you over 200 invitations you can use each month. So I would say that you might see more success doing this than you do maybe running like a paid campaign. But you can bring your biggest engagers into your LinkedIn page by asking them to invite their connections to follow like the company page. So what they allow you to do is send a little personalized note to them, just asking them, if they want to follow your page. So I've seen this provide a lot of great success for clients, and then also for our own personal Wall Street page too. So it's a great free tool that they give you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm a bit slow off the mark on these things, Joseph, but even I've discovered that, and I think it's really useful. So
Yeah.
just the final thing, I'm conscious of time. Please keep your questions coming in, anybody watching this. But the last point you make about LinkedIn specifically is, are you utilizing articles on LinkedIn? And what do you mean by that? Is it making them work harder for you on LinkedIn?
No, I mean, and this kind of comes back to my point about utilizing the newsletter feature on LinkedIn. You can publish, or you could consider publishing, blogs and things like that, that people in your organization are writing to directly to LinkedIn, as an article. And LinkedIn really likes when you do this, because you're bringing your content to their platform. I've seen some good success in doing this, but ultimately, you kind of can think of your LinkedIn page as like a showcase. You can go and you can publish your blog there. They've even added, capabilities where you can go and build out product pages, for your products or services on LinkedIn. You can do your newsletters there now too. So any time you can maybe keep some of your content posted on their platform, they do like to see that. And I've seen their algorithm kind of reflect that too. It obviously benefits them when you're driving people to do more on their platform as well.
Great, great. Well, I'm going to bring our formal conversation to an end there, Joseph. But there's been some great tips. I mean, it really sounds like taking full advantage of building out your LinkedIn page would be the great tip there. Having a real look at that content calendar and sort of using that as your foundation. And really, again, very, very encouraging to hear that content involving people still has a major pull on things, which is great. What I think we'll do, well, it just leaves me to say thank you, Joseph. Ask anybody if they've got any questions. Joseph obviously is going to stick around for a little bit once we've turned the recording off, and it will be free to answer any more social media questions. Chris and Karen are on hand to answer any of your more general marketing questions. But Joseph, thanks very much indeed for giving over your time. I know it's still pretty early, so thank you for that. Maybe a little too early for sushi for breakfast. I don't know. I think some people like.
I'll eat anything for breakfast. So.
You'll eat anything for breakfast. You probably will now. And I'd like to thank the live team. Ashley, thank you very much indeed for your support. And please join us next time in the Marketing Kitchen. It's going to be on Wednesday, February the 28th at 8 a.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. UK, and all those time zones in between, when it's the turn of meeting the press at trade shows. Dum, dum, dum. That will be stepping into the Marketing Kitchen. So thank you all for joining. Until next time, goodbye.